Subramaniyam with CDT. Today we're going to talk about cabling and piping with Creo 1.0. I'm going to try and cover the schematic driven cabling, manual piping, which also includes the flexible hoses. Also going to cover some spec driven piping and schematic driven piping. Alright, so these are the things that we want to cover. I want to make sure that I leave enough time in the end for questions if we have any. And I think Rosalinda is going to run a little poll before we get started. So you want to get started, Rosalinda?
Okay, here we go. And for the last one. It's all yours, Sukumar.
Alright guys, so let's start off with this. So this is what we're going to cover, schematic driven cabling and manual cabling first. Alright, so in schematic driven cabling we use a software called Routed Systems Designer. Now it is with Creo 1.0, it's called Creo Schematic. Okay, I'm just trying to show you what we are trying to do here. So I have a charger assembly, I have a cabling assembly within that. I'm going to open this little cabling assembly and you can see I have some components right here, electrical components, and I'm trying to route my wires to them. Okay, now what's also important to note is that all these components have coordinate systems with certain names. See that entry 1, entry 2, entry 3, so on and so forth. And I want you to also observe that the Z direction of that particular coordinate system is pointing outwards. I apologize if you cannot see it very clearly, but you can see the Z is pointing outwards. Alright, so that being said, let's look at some of the components. So you have a pin 2 right here highlighted. You have a pin 2 again on this corner. You have 2 pins over here, and then you have a main pin over there. Okay, so now if I want to schematically route pipes, I need to first go ahead and create a wiring diagram in the Creo schematic package. So I have a sample diagram and I'll show you how I created it. You can see right here, this is my little sample diagram. Now the way I created it is I went through the catalog explorer, blocks. So you have a lot of blocks. This is a library. You can download it and you can customize it however you want. All the symbols, the names, everything can be customized. So I just pick one, place it right there. Right? So once I place that, I can also go route a cable. So pick a wire and say, pick a wire real quick, and then we want to route from, say, a location over here to a location over there. See that? That's how this whole diagram was created. Now we would take this diagram and export it as an XML file, and we will import this XML file into the cabling package into Creo Parametric, and then route the cables. Now, there are two important things that we need to be careful about. Now, first thing is, how are we going to map this particular symbol to a component in Pro Engineer, or I'm so sorry, Creo. So how are we going to map this symbol to Creo? We're going to select that component, we're going to right click, we're going to go to properties, and you see you should have a parameter called model name. Now this is a symbol that's outside, so I haven't really added that parameter here, but I can show you real quick. You select this, right click, properties, you should have a parameter called model underscore name. See that? Now model underscore name has the name of the ProE part that this is going to map to. So you can see conc underscore 2 pin, which actually is same as conc underscore 2 pin. So that is how I'm going to map this component to this particular block. Okay, that's one important thing. Once you do that and you route cables or wires, you see that you have certain ports over there, say port 1, port 2. Okay, now in this ports, if I select a port and go to its properties, you would also see another parameter which says entry port. Okay, it says entry port is entry underscore 2, which is same as the entry underscore 2 coordinate system right there. See that? Entry underscore 2 coordinate system. So the wire's gonna go into that particular coordinate system, and you can see the Z is pointing outside, right? So the wire's gonna come in like that. That is how I am actually mapping each of the component to a symbol and each coordinate system to a port. Okay, now that's one. Next thing is, if you select any of the wires and you right click, you go to its properties, you can see that it has all the properties from say color to say bend radius to spool to thickness, everything. Now, instead of you manually entering all these values every time you create a wire, you can load a bunch of Excel files as data sets. Now, once you have that, you can go to a data set, apply a data set, and then you can pick whatever you want. Different color, different wire gauge, different thickness, and you can say, okay, and that will be applied to that particular wire. All right? So that's how we pretty much create this whole wiring diagram. So we created, or we added all these symbols, we changed the model name parameter, we went to the ports, we added this entry port parameter for the ports, we routed the wires, and we applied the data set to the wires. Now once you do this part, you go File, Export, and you want to export it as an XML file. So you export it as an XML file and you hit OK. All right. So once this XML file is exported, you would go back to your cable, right? So this is my ProE assembly, and I'm going to go to Applications, Cabling. So inside the cabling assembly, the first thing that you do is to basically go create a harness, right? So I'm going to say harness. I'm going to name it harness 1. All right. Now I say OK. Note that if I use a different template from what my assembly is in, it won't let me. See that? So I want to choose the same template or the unit system that my assembly has. Millimeters. So now once I create the harness, I want to go ahead and enable the features so that you can see what's in there. See that? It's a harness part. Now, first thing we're going to do is we're going to import this XML file. How do we import this? You have this icon right here. Click on that. You're going to say RS Designer, which is Routed Systems Designer. This is what it used to be called earlier. You want to import a whole XML or just a part of it. I'm just going to import the whole XML. I'm going to browse and pick that text XML. Say done and done. Now once you do this, you have some tools which enable you to compare what you have on your ProESMB and what you have on your XML file. So when you go compare it, you can see the XML file has tools and the design does not have it. This is your assembly. Okay. Now, next thing we're going to do right here is to designate. I want to designate this component to be same as this component, right? So you have to designate it. So for that, we have something called auto designate. Click on that. You see that it finds there is only one unique CON_M_9 pin part. So it matches that with your cabling symbol, the Routed System Designer symbol. Notice that there are multiple instances of these parts, so you have to manually do this. So this part, number 2, is right here. Right? I picked one. You see there are 2 of them, 1 and 2. So I say this one's number 2. See that? And then you hit apply. You see it auto matches. It auto matches the other components. Now you say okay, you can go update it and you can do a comparison real quick just to see that. Notice the wires are not there, but everything else has been matched. Okay. Now, once we are at this point, it's about time to create the wire. Now, when you create the wire, you have different routing procedures that you can follow. Now, one of the routing procedures is using a network, right? So I'm going to create a network. A network is like a path that your wire can follow, all right? So I'm going to use a network for a couple of cables, then I'm going to route them without using the network. So I say route a network, and I go 1, 2, 3. I just keep clicking. Now I can control the position of each of these location points that I'm clicking very easily. Okay, so click one right there. Now if you want to edit this network, you can select that, right click, and you can say edit. You can pick a network point, move it, pick a network point, move it. See that? It will let you edit very, very easily. So here we have our little network, right? Now let's go back and see what wires we want to route. We want to route wire number 1 and wire number 2. Notice wire number 1 goes from entry port 1. So I'm going to pick that, go to its properties real quick. So you notice it goes to entry port 1 to entry port 1 in the other part. Similarly, wire number 2 to 2. So when we go back here to our cabling assembly, you can see when you route cables, you can just search and you see it shows that there are 8 wires that you need to route. We're going to pick a couple of wires, 1 and 2, move it and close. Now you see by default it is following the path of the network. See that? Following the path of the network. So instead of saying via network, I can do a simple route which will take the shortest route. See that? Okay, so I'm going to go via network. I want you to see wire number 1 goes from entry 1 coordinate system and wire number 2 goes from entry 2 coordinate system. And they go to entry 1 and 2 over here. You can hit OK, and there you have it. Now I made a simple mistake right here. I did not add the color. So when I go thick line, see everything seems to be showing in like ash colored. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick them real quick, delete them, okay, because I can always recreate them real quick. I want to go ahead and add my wire colors. So appearance manager real quick, go to file, open, and then you want to go ahead and add your wire colors. So now that you've added your wire colors and you go try to route the same two wires again, wire 1 and 2, and hit apply. Yeah, I don't know why they wouldn't come up like that. Alright, so I should have done that before I started routing the cables and creating the harness, but I'll show you another example where it actually comes up with all the wires. Okay, let's continue with this. Now, next thing I'm going to route is the wires 3, 4, 5, and 6. I move them, say OK, and you can see how those wires go from each part to the other, right? Coordinate system to coordinate system. Here, they're actually trying to follow the network. I don't want them to go the longer route to the network. I want to just say simple route. See that? I think now I got the color. See that? You can actually see the colors now. So here is a simple route method. Okay. Now some people don't like to use the network. What if you don't like to use the network and you want to control it via control points for every little wire? So the other two wires that go from here to here, I'm going to try to do it without the network. So I go route cables, search for the two wires, and I'm going to say simple route and say OK. See that? So it goes through, interferes with everything, some that you don't like it. So you go select both of them, right click, you just get this. So here you go, insert location, and you want to start off 1, 2, 3, and you can see how your cable kind of follows your location path, right? So there you have your locations, and you can say done. Now we do the same thing for this. So here is schematic driven piping, right? So you have it right here. As your cables, and again these are references, right? So we use references to route cables. You can move the component wherever you want and the cable will follow it. Okay. You can also do cabling info. You can get a harness wire list and say apply. So you see it tells you wire 1, what color it is, the length of it, it's going from 2, right? You can also get like the physical routing. You can get the length of each part. If you look at the bottom of the screen, it says total length of the cable. See that? So you can measure each wire, or you can get a list of wires. Now all this, the from and to information, the wire sizes, all these can be shown in your drawings as a repeat region parameter. So now before we get into that, I want to show you that how to manually route the cable. Now I go route pipes, route cables. I'm going to go create a new wire. See that? Now I want to go from, you can add a location. or you can allow an undesignated coordinate system. So I'm going to just go ahead, turn on the coordinate system. Pick one, see that? And then you want to go here, allow an undesignated coordinate system. It's not designated. Why? Because you know what? We didn't have any intelligence added to it. So now instead of going via the network, you can see it's going via the network. You can go simple route. See that? Say okay. You can actually go then do insert location on it. So you can go 1, 2, 3, and you know I want to go right over there, over here, and say done. Now you can see that you just routed a wire, right, without having any schematic. So if you want to do it manually, you'd have to do that for each and every wire and have colors, you know, all those other details added to it. Now, so that was more of a manual routing of wires. Now we just saw the schematic version of it. Now you can also go add things like spools and stuff, you know. So I go bundle, create a bundle, give it a name, hit enter. Say we want a round bundle. I want to create a little spool, say along the path. So you want to go start from there, press Control, and end it over there. You can see that I want to include all of these in there, and you would see how you can create that real quick. All right, really simple example. All right. But you can see that you're not navigating through menus, you're not digging through information, everything's in front of you. It's very simple and easy to work with in the cabling environment. Right? So now that being said, let's also go look at the drawing of it. What can it give me? So I have a completed drawing that I want to show you. So here, you can see, let me just get rid of these. You can see that you can actually create those nail board drawings where you stretch them out, right? You can create your 3D drawings. You can see that you have your from pin 1 to pin 1 spool, color, and length. All this information about each and every wire, right, can be shown. This is read from the routed system designer into ProEngineer and from ProEngineer into drawing using the repeat region parameters. All right. So this would be your cabling drawing that you might want to have. Now this being said, let's go check out piping. All right. So in pipings, we were going to first talk about manual routing of piping. Then we're going to also talk about flexible piping. We're going to talk about editing the pipeline. Then we talk about schematics. And then we also talk about spec-driven piping. Okay? So I'm going to go 12:23. So I want to leave at least 10 minutes for any questions. So I'm going to open this pipe routing assembly. So you can see, here's your pipe assembly. Want to go turn on the coordinate systems. Again, you have to be careful and make sure that your Z is pointing outwards. Okay. Now, you need in here is a line stock. So you can go line what's already there. Then you can go edit it. You can see that it is a 25A stock pipe OD, pipe thickness. All right. So notice it can be straight or flexible. By default, it is straight. So all this information is right there in the line stock. So now I'm going to go create a pipeline. You give it a name, say water, hit enter. The line stock that I'm going to use is this. And now I want to start creating. So set start. I want to start from that port, and then I'm going to extend. So when you extend, you can enter, see that? You can enter a value and you can drag it or you can also go along an axis, see that? X, Y, or Z. You can go offset from references. So pick this. I'm offsetting from that reference to 0, so it's going to stop right there. I say OK. Now what you can also do, I'm trying to use one example to show you every possible way of doing it. Okay, so you can say follow an axis. I'm going to pick the axis. So notice you can start from the end and end till the end. See that? So the pipeline will be as long as the length of that axis. Now you have two pipelines and you want to connect them. So you go connect that to connect here. See that? So you see by default it's going to add your bends. Right? Now you can say I want to control it by the length, or you can say I want to control it by the angles. See that? So I want to go 70. So you can see how the angle can be controlled. You can go 130. See that? So you can control it like that or via the lengths. Okay. Alright. So now that you've connected that, I want you to also see that there is a little sketch over here. Fortunately, that part's in blue color. It's very bad of me to do that, but you can look. You can see there is a sketch on that particular plane that I'm going to use to follow. So I can say follow a sketch. I'm going to pick that sketch. I want to go from the start of the sketch to the end of the sketch and say OK. And then I can go connect that to that. So you can go drag them. So you see it's very simple and easy to use. So you can drag it by that and by the angle. Okay. You can go another length of the angle. So you have a bunch of options right here that you can control your part by. All right. So now I'm going to go ahead and say I'm going to start routing from this corner. All right. And 2-point port, and I'm going to pick that port. See what happens? It goes directly to that. Now, if you don't like that, you can always go extend, offset from a reference, pick that in the X direction. You can say it's moving that way. Hit apply. You want to move again in the Y direction. Hit OK, and then say 2-port and pick that. You notice all your bends are automatically added. They are added automatically because the environment that you set in is bend and the lines type is straight, and that's your bend radius. You have options to choose from any of the 4. This was my default, so I let it pick that. So now you can see display thick pipes. You can see how your pipe goes. Right? So now, that's how you would go ahead and route pipes. I've tried to show you pretty much most of the options right here. Now the next example that we're going to talk about is editing this particular pipe. So here I have a pipeline like this. Get into piping. You want to move the segment. So what you can do is you can say route this particular pipe, insert a breakpoint. So I'm going to insert a breakpoint right there, and you see how I can dimension it, right? I can dimension it by length or by length ratio, distance from, you know, a previous corner, distance from a selected plane. I have different options right here. Okay, so you can move it however you want. Say OK. Then insert another break. Say on this side. OK. Now you can select that pipe and say move. Now when you move, you see this is very similar to your copy paste fashion. Okay, move in the X direction, you can drag it, see that? Then you can say new move, I want to rotate, and rotate with respect to Z, and you can rotate it. Now you can go a little crazy and also say rotate with respect to the X-axis, and you can rotate like that. See that? You can do that also. So you say done, and you can see your wipe goes like that. Okay? So editing and doing all these are pretty simple, is what I'm trying to get at. So once we've done with this, I want to also talk to you guys about creating flexible piping. Pretty easy. It's just like sending a spline through a bunch of points, right? It's very, very simple. So here I'm going to turn on the display of my points, and you can see I have a bunch of points. Okay, now application piping. Now I want to create a pipeline. You want to go ahead and set it a name. I want to use the line start. I go into environment and I want to make sure that, hey, you know what, my line start is flexible. I can set a length and say this is how much I want the length to be, or I can go free, okay, and say okay. Now set start. You want to start from here. You want to go to a point. You want to follow another point. Now notice that if this point is a point feature, you can choose to create a section through all the points like that. You see this was an array. You can edit them. See, I'm going to push that point away, so minus 200. You can see that you can control the pipes through your point, and that would be a flexible pipe. Another thing that I missed showing you guys is one with respect to editing of the pipeline, and let me see if I can use another example to show you that. So in here, you can go application piping, and you want to route this pipe. So you can say you can replace, you can suppress, you can resume. See that? You can follow a curve, you can follow an axis, you can follow a sketch, you can follow another pipeline. You can delete what you created last, right? You can select the pipeline. See that? You can select that, right click, and you can go ahead and edit. See that? You can edit the radius here. You can say 40 and Control G. See that? You can also go to the environment right here. You can see it's straight or flexible, bend, fitting, or miter. You can choose those examples right here, right? You can select that, and you can do, info, set up a node. You can edit its parameters. You can pattern that. You can group it with something else, right? So you can do all these things with a certain pipeline. Okay, so it's really, really simple and really easy to do. So the next thing that we have after we do this is to do a spec driven piping. Let's do spec driven first, and then we'll do a schematic driven. In a spec driven piping, what I do is I basically go ahead and set up the specs for a certain pipeline. Say what type of fitting to use, what sizes I should use. So once I set up these things, my usability, ease of use is very high. Okay, now you can see this is a fitting assembly. So I have already created these little pipelines for you, because see, the routing technique is still the same. Okay, applications, go to piping, and you see right here at the top it says spec driven is enabled, right? You enable that through a config.pro option, okay? And spec driven is enabled. So if you go into the pipeline setup, you can update your model with all the latest. If you make any kind of changes, you can update them. You see right here, you have design rules. You can select a setup and say, hey, you know what are the design rules it's following, what parameters it's following. You can check that. Okay. Now, if you go into the pipeline, you can see you can suppress, resume, and add all these. Okay. You want to create a pipeline. Now, notice when you try to create it, it automatically gets you a training spec. See that? Size that you want to create, whatever schedule you might have, whatever mnemonic you want to use, right? You say, see all the parameters right here. Now, insert a fitting. All right. Now, I want to stick in a T section right there. So notice it picks the size. Now these sizes, I can hit apply, right? You can stick in a reducer if you want to. See that? And you can position it. And you can see the orientation of the reducer. You can flip it. You can rotate it 90 degrees. Wherever it's a circle, so it doesn't make a difference right now. Right? Now you can go look at thick pipes and you can see that. Now what you can do, you expand this, you see it tells you that there are invalid corners. You can select both of them. You can right click, insert an elbow in there. So notice it sees that this is 50, so it puts a 50 elbow in there. You can display the thick pipes and you can see that. Right? So people who don't want to use schematic, but they want to kind of like route their pipes, with a certain spec, can always use this. Okay, since welding, creating spools, creating a solid pipe. So I pick that and say okay. Right. So it's going to go ahead and create a pipeline wherever you need. Right. So there you have it. Okay, so this would be a kind of spec-driven pipeline. So you can edit the pipeline. You can see right here when I try to edit, you can change the segment. You can change the corner type. So you pick the corner right here. Say okay. Okay, see it's defaulting to fitting because that's what my config options set up to do. But I can use another example and show you the exact same thing where you can change a bend to an elbow, right, or an elbow to a bend. You can do those things with the pipeline. Right here you can change its spec if you want to, any bend parameters you might have, flow direction if you want to. So all these can be changed and edited real quick using the spec-driven piping. So let's see another example real quick and I can show you what it is. Alright, so let's look at a moving segments example. Let's get into piping and let's edit a pipeline. You see that right there, corner type. Say okay. You see that it's a bend. I can say I want to have a miter, right? And I want to have 2 miters with a cut length. You can see right here. See that 2 miters. And then you can do thick pipes. You can go edit, pick that, okay. I want 3 miters of 40 each. So you can see that, right? So you can edit all these within a pipeline real quick, okay. Now that we're done with spec-driven piping, we're going to talk about schematic-driven piping. So in a schematic-driven piping, again, we got to go ahead and open a RSD diagram, and we can talk about how this diagram was created. So let's go schematic and open this. You see right here they have a connection, both of them. You see they have a reducer, they have another reducer, they have a gate valve, they have a check valve, and all these. Okay. Even here, if you select a particular symbol, you go to its properties, you see that its model name is that. Okay. If you also go to its port and pick the properties, you see it's using port 0 coordinate system. So let's see. Let's go back here. See, this is model name is 150 AIC. So I'm going to open the spec or schematic driven piping example, and here we can see how the schematic driven piping is going to work. So let's open that, and you can see there is 150. See that? 150, and this has a coordinate system called port 0 right there, port 0, right? That's what this is matching to, 150 AIC, and the port that it's matching to is port 0. Okay. Now, similar to that, we also have valves. So I select that, go to the properties. You notice that you have all these properties, different sizes. So it's going from 80 to 150 to 80. You can apply a data set, and you can see, hey, I want to go from 150 to 80. And notice it automatically picks the right size part. This is the name of the ProE part that it needs to use. So this is like a data set that you can fill it up in Excel, and you can load it one time, and that's it. You never worried about it again. So you just go apply a data set. I want to go from size 150 to size 80, and you hit OK. It will automatically fill the model name parameter for you. Similarly, over here, you have 80 to 50. You also have gate valves. So you can go apply a data set here. You see you have different types of gate valves, size 50 gate valve, size 80, 150, 125, all these, right? So all these are data sets that you load one time and you never worry about it again. Now if you see how did we place all these. So we go Catalog Explorer, we have a reducer, concentric, pick, and place. There you go. See that? That's it. That's how you place it. Then you can just go to its properties, apply a data set, and then you pick, oh, I want to go from 150 to 100 to 50. You say OK, it picks the right ProE part for you and say OK. There you go. It also updates it for you. Okay? So once you do this, you're going to go export it as an XML file, right? And you want to say Pro Cabling, and you say OK. It's really, really simple to create these little cables and wires in the 2D. All you do is pick and place the symbols, select right click, go to properties, and apply a data set. And that data set is a one-time thing that you load. It's always there. So you don't have to remember, oh, what size ProE part do I use for this particular symbol. All right, so once that thing is done, you want to go into piping. Now note that when I create a new pipeline, I have my pipeline routing config option to be set up to be schematic. That's why I get a different box right now. Now I go File Open. You want to pick that. You see you want to route different legs. So you want to say leg 1. Now say water 1, 2. Now I have to make sure I designate the equipment. See, I have IC1, which points to that. I have IC2, which points to that. So that's how my wire or my pipe's going to go. So now I'm going to go insert a fitting. So let's see the order of the fittings also in here. Reducer, gate valve, check valve. Okay. So note that I'm not picking anything from here. All I do is I go click. It defaults to the reducer and it picks the right size for me. See that? When I go to placement, you can see that. You can move it around. Okay. You can hit apply. And then I go pick another location. So you see it again picks the reducer and picks the right size for me. Okay. I'm going to go click over here. Notice it picks a gate valve. And now you see you can flip it. You can rotate it. See that? Alright, can do all that. You hit apply. Notice automatic flange and gaskets are added. So you can see the gasket and the flanges. You want to go pick next and you see check valve. There you have, it reads from the schematic, gets all the sizes. All you do is pick and place and choose a location along the pipeline that you routed as to where you want to place this. That's all you pretty much do. Other than that, everything's done through the schematic. And now also notice you have two invalid corners. So when you go right click, you can go an elbow or a bend. So if I go elbow here, so you see there's an elbow. I can go bend and you see I get a bend. Right? So this would be like a schematic driven piping, and I don't have a drawing of it, but I think I can find one real quick. Let me go find it real quick. I can use another example to show you the files for it. So give me a second. No, I don't have a drawing created for it. I'm sorry about that, but yeah, you can actually create 2D drawings of this piping real quick. It's just like a Pro-E component, and you can also send this to a software called Alias Isogen, which will create the isometric drawings with the pipeline views and all the symbols with it. And you can do that from right here. So generate the PCF file, and you can select a pipeline, and it will automatically generate a PCF file that you can send into Isogen, and then you can open it in the Isogen Alias Isogen software, and you can create a isometric drawing of it as a DXF. Right. So that's pretty much what I had. Apologize if I rushed through real quick, but I had a lot of material to cover. I did leave my. I'll show you guys my email address. If you guys need to contact me for anything, you can always call me or email me. That's my email address. All right, Rosalinda? You there, Rosalinda?
Yes, I am. Yes, I'm here. It looks like we have a lot of questions. We may not be able to get to all of them, but if not, I can shoot those over to you, Sukumar, to answer for us.
Okay, let's see. Okay.
The first question we have is, how does this work with flat ribbon cables, like the cable inside your computer for the floppy drive or IDE disk?
Yes. So you have something called packaging inside cabling. There's an icon called packaging. You can click on that particular packaging icon, and it will let you arrange your wires like flat, or you can arrange it as a circle, like a, like you can go flat, or you can. Okay, what's the next one, Rosalinda?
The next question is, if the hose is part of a mechanism, can you lock the hose length to see what the hose will do throughout the motion?
Yes, yes. A lot of people, especially and stuff, and they have flexible hoses, so you can set the length of it to be a certain value, and as you move, if the tangency doesn't fail, if it doesn't stretch too much, or if it's not like crumble down, it will not fail. If you move it and then it violates some of its bend radius values, then it will throw you an error or a fit. Okay.
Next.
What's next?
Does Creo cabling support flex cables, flat printed ribbon cables?
Repeat that, I can't.
Does Creo cabling support flex cables, like flat printed ribbon cables?
Yes, yes it does.
Okay. Next is, where can I go to look at connectors, spools, ports, and line stock?
Where do they go? Is that what they're asking?
Yes.
Where can I go learn how to set up connect? There is a class which talks about cabling with router system designer. All it does is basically explains you as to how to set up this the router system designer, and also the cabling and the electrical connectors, so that say for example, if I have a connector that I'm going to use all the time, and I can set up a symbol in RSD where its model name and its entry port parameters are already filled in. In that way, I don't have to do it manually every time the way I did it in the presentation. That class is the best class. I learned a lot from that class too. So that class is something that you definitely have to look for. So cabling with router system designer, or cabling with schematics 1.0 Creo. It's a very good class. It talks about it in a lot of detail about how to do that.
And also, I can answer this one, the piping cabling extension, those are bought separately. And I could shoot you an email on that, Donald. And we do have one last question. Do you have to create all of your individual wires before you group them?
Do you have to create all your individual wires? Now, it also depends if you are creating them wires as a schematic, right? If you create it in the schematic, you can create all the wires and you can group them together in the schematic if that's what you're asking. Yes, you have to create them individually and then group them. And then you can come back into Creo and then you can route them at once as a group. You don't have to route them individually. Hope I answered the question.
That looks like that's all the questions that we have.
You want to give a couple of minutes if somebody has anything else depending on my answers?
Oh yeah, not a problem. Just so everybody knows, just so everybody knows, feel free to shoot me any questions as well. If you want to reply back to the webinar replay email that I'm going to send out this afternoon, feel free to send me any questions as well. I'll get those to Sukumar if needed.
Yeah, and I have my email address right here too, so anybody can email me with whatever question they have with cabling. I would put my phone number in there, but this is going on YouTube. So I already got a couple of calls from China and India, so and it's in like late night hours, so.
Oh Lord.
That's the only reason I'm not putting my cell phone in there, otherwise I would.
We do. Oh, that's probably why I've been getting strange calls. But there is another question. Does the cable package come with some basic connectors, switches, etc.?
Yes, sir. When you buy cabling, you can actually go download a graphic. Just like how you would download a graphics library, you can download a connector library from PTC. Again, a lot of people will want to customize it, but because you don't want to use the generic names that come with it. But yes, of course, you get a library of everything from PTC.com. Yeah. All right. Looks like that is it, and I have to also apologize to you guys because I think I canceled it on you guys like last week. I was actually at Intel, and they they don't have the policy of me using their internet to do webinars because I'm more of a visitor, so I couldn't do it last time. Apologize for that.
I guess that'll do it.
Someone has their hand raised.
Oh, he had his question answered.
Okay.
And
right.
for those of you that would like to learn more about the direct modeling product, we're having the direct modeling webinar next Thursday at the same time. Hope everybody has a great weekend.
Thanks, Rosalinda. Bye-bye.
For your